In the heart of the jungle, a young woman carried a secret that could destroy a powerful man, but also save her life. What she chose will shock you. In the heart of Bangkok lived a young Thai woman named Molly, only 24 years old. To outsiders, her life seemed ordinary. Another face among millions in a busy city. Another young woman searching for meaning, work, and love in the chaos of modern Thailand. But Molly's story was anything but ordinary. Hers was a tale so strange, so controversial, and so deeply human that it would shake not only her own life, but also the lives of everyone around her. It began with an encounter that seemed harmless enough. Molly, who worked part-time at a local guest house, often welcomed travelers from all corners of the globe. Among them, one group stood out, strong, towering men from Samoa, a small island nation in the Pacific. They were unlike anyone she had ever met. Muscular, loud, filled with energy and laughter, yet also carrying a mysterious cultural aura that fascinated her. At first, there were only a few casual conversations. Molly was polite, offering them food and helping them navigate the city. But soon, their friendship grew into something deeper. They admired her beauty, her soft skin, gentle smile, and eyes that carried both innocence and curiosity. She, in turn, was captivated by their warmth and their sense of community. Unlike the men she had known in Thailand, who often seemed reserved or judgmental, these Samoans embraced her fully, making her feel like she belonged. Days turned into weeks, and Molly found herself spending more and more time with them. She learned about their traditions, their songs, and their way of life. And little by little, her nights became entangled with their presence. What began as companionship soon turned into passion, intense, overwhelming, and forbidden. But what shocked everyone who later heard her story was not that she fell in love with a Samoan man. It was that she became involved with not one, not two, but eventually 22 Samoan men at the same time. Molly herself could hardly explain how it happened. She would often say, "It wasn't planned. It wasn't something I wanted at first. It just happened." Each night blurred into the next. Each man brought with him a different kind of attention, a different way of making her feel alive. Some treated her with tenderness, whispering promises of care. Others were fiery, overwhelming her with raw passion. Together, they created a secret world where Molly was at the center of something larger than life itself. But secrets never stay hidden forever. Soon, Molly discovered something that would change her fate forever. She was pregnant. At just 24 years old, carrying a child whose father could be any one of the 22 men, Molly's life spiraled into a storm of questions, fears, and unimaginable choices. Who was the father? Would the Samoans claim responsibility or abandon her? How would her Thai family react if they discovered the truth? And above all, could Molly survive the weight of living in a reality where passion, culture, and shame collided in the most shocking way? Molly sat alone in her small rented room that night, staring at the pregnancy test trembling in her hand. 2 red lines, clear, undeniable. The weight of what this meant pressed down on her chest until she could hardly breathe. 22 men. Which one could it be? How would she even begin to tell them? Her mind spun back to the very first time she let one of them into her private world. His name was Tay, the eldest of the Samoan group, tall and broad-shouldered, his voice carrying authority that made even the younger men respect him. Tue had been the first to show Molly more than casual interest. He complimented her often, brought her small gift from the market, and shielded her from drunken tourists at the guest house. Molly felt safe around him, like he could protect her from the chaos of the city. But soon after, another of the men, Lockie, with his quick smile and playful nature, began to draw her in as well. Unlike Tue, who was serious and commanding, Lockie treated her with laughter. He made her forget her worries, pulling her into late-night adventures, sharing street food at 2 a.m., and teaching her Samoan songs under the stars. And that was only the beginning. One by one, the others found their way into her life. Some were soft-spoken and gentle. Others were wild, intense, and unrestrained. Each of them saw something different in Molly, and each of them gave her something she had never felt before. For Molly, it was intoxicating. She felt wanted, adored, even worshipped. Every night was like stepping into another world. Sometimes tender, sometimes overwhelming, but always unforgettable. She told herself it was temporary, that it was just passion and curiosity, that sooner or later they would return to their island and her life would go back to normal. But then came the pregnancy. Now nothing was normal. The following evening, Molly sat across from Tue in a small noodle shop. The noise of the street around them, the motorcycles, the vendors calling out, the chatter of families, faded into the background. "I have something to tell you," she whispered, her voice shaking. Tue leaned forward, his dark eyes narrowing with concern. "What is it, Molly?" She swallowed hard, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air like a heavy stone. Tue froze. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, finally, he asked the question Molly had feared the most. "Whose is it?" Her throat closed. Her chest tightened. She couldn't answer. She couldn't tell him it might not be his, that it could belong to any of the men he led, men he trusted like brothers. Tears burned her eyes. I don't know." Silence. Tue leaned back, his jaw tightening, his hand clenched into a fist on the table. But he didn't raise his voice. He only stared at her, a storm building in his gaze. "You have to tell the others," he finally said, his voice low and firm. "This isn't just between us anymore." And so the storm began. When Molly gathered them all, 22 towering Samoan men crowded into the dim room of the guest house. The air was thick with tension. Some were confused, some were angry, some were frightened. One man, Sione, stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Are you saying any of us could be the father?" Molly nodded, unable to speak, her hands pressed protectively against her stomach. Arguments erupted immediately. Some men accused others of being with her more often. Others tried to claim responsibility, shouting that they would stand by her no matter what. Tue tried to calm them down, but the group was fracturing before Molly's eyes. What had once felt like a family was now tearing itself apart. Molly broke down, sobbing in the corner, whispering, "I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't mean..." But it was too late. The secret she thought she could contain had exploded. In the days that followed, the men became divided. Some distanced themselves from her entirely, too afraid of the shame and the responsibility. Others drew closer, insisting they would protect her no matter who the father was. A few even suggested they could all share the responsibility together, that the child could belong to all of them, raised by the collective strength of their brotherhood. But Molly knew the truth was not that simple. In her heart, she feared what would happen if her conservative Thai family ever discovered her secret. In their eyes, she would not just be a fallen woman. She would bring disgrace upon them all. Her mother called one evening, her voice gentle but suspicious. "Molly, you sound tired. Are you eating enough? Are you hiding something from me?" Molly bit her lip, fighting back tears. She wanted to tell her mother everything, to unburden herself of the shame and fear that weighed on her chest. But the words stuck in her throat. She lied, as she had so many times before, whispering, "I'm fine, May, just busy with work." But inside, she knew the truth was eating her alive. And yet, even as the chaos grew, Molly couldn't help but feel the pull of passion still lingering. Each night, when one of the men knocked softly on her door, she struggled with herself. She knew it was dangerous, reckless, even self-destructive. But the loneliness, the fear, the need for comfort, it was too strong. She told herself, just one more time, just a night. But every night turned into another and another. It was as though she was trapped in a cycle she could not escape, torn between love, lust, guilt, and survival. And so, her story deepened. A story of a young woman who became the center of 22 men's desires. A story of cultural collision, of secret nights and hidden fears, of a pregnancy that would decide her future and test the loyalty of everyone around her. But this was only the beginning. The storm was still gathering. And Molly's journey, filled with heartbreak, betrayal, and shocking revelations, was far from over. The tension in the guest house did not fade. Instead, it thickened like a storm cloud hovering over every conversation, every shared meal, every glance between the men. The once joyous laughter of 22 brothers echoing through the halls now carried an edge, an undertone of rivalry, suspicion, and quiet rage. Molly felt the shift most sharply when she walked into a room. Before, they had looked at her with affection, curiosity, even playfulness. Now, their eyes followed her with something heavier. Some were protective, some questioning, some silently claiming her as theirs. She remembered one night when she slipped into the kitchen to make tea. The air was warm with the smell of boiled ginger, the dim yellow bulb above flickering. Suddenly, she heard footsteps. Turning, she saw Lockie leaning against the doorway, his smile dimmed by worry. "You shouldn't be alone right now," he murmured. Molly tightened her grip on the cup. "I just needed some air." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "It doesn't matter whose child it is. If it's mine, I'll protect you. If it's not, I'll still protect you. I don't care." Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, to lean into the comfort of his promise. But even as he spoke, another figure appeared. His silhouette filled the doorway, broad and unyielding. His deep voice cut through the air. "She doesn't need empty promises, Lockie. She needs truth, responsibility, not boys who play with her heart." The tension between them was electric. Molly stood frozen, her heart hammering, as the two men locked eyes. They were not just arguing about responsibility. They were fighting over her, silently declaring their rivalry. The days turned into weeks. The news of her pregnancy could not be hidden forever. Some of the men began whispering among themselves, plotting in hushed voices, their trust in each other crumbling. Molly overheard fragments of conversations, accusations that one had spent more time in her room than the others, suspicions that she favored certain men. One evening, during dinner, it boiled over. The men sat around a long wooden table, bowls of rice and fish steaming before them. The atmosphere was heavy, the clatter of chopsticks unusually loud in the silence. Suddenly, Sione slammed his hand on the table, his voice rising. "Enough of this pretending. We all know not everyone here will claim her child. Some of you only want her for your own pleasure." A chair scraped loudly as another man, Fetsu, shot to his feet. "And what about you, Sione? You've been sneaking into her room just as much as the rest of us. Don't act like you're better." The room erupted into shouts, chairs toppling, fists slamming the table. Molly stood trembling at the head of the room, her voice drowned out by the storm. She cried out, "Stop! Please stop!" But her plea only deepened the chaos. It was Tue, as always, who restored silence. His booming voice cut through the noise. "Sit down, all of you." The men froze, their chests heaving, sweat shining on their brows. Tue's gaze swept across them, sharp and commanding. "This fighting won't change anything. She carries a child. That child is innocent, and whether you like it or not, we are all bound to her now." Molly's knees weakened with relief, though her heart still trembled. She realized then that Tue's authority was the only thing holding them from falling apart completely. But Molly's own struggles were only deepening. Her body was beginning to change. Some mornings she woke with nausea so strong she could barely stand. Her emotions swung violently, from tears to laughter to exhaustion. The men tried, in their own ways, to help. Some cooked for her, others fetched medicine. Some even sat awake at night just to make sure she was all right. Yet their care only made Molly's guilt grow heavier. She carried within her not just a child, but the weight of 22 men's fractured loyalty. Worse still, whispers began to drift beyond the walls of the guest house. The neighbors noticed her belly, the way the Samoan men guarded her closely, never letting strangers near. Rumors spread quickly, exaggerated with each retelling. A Thai girl surrounded by foreign men, carrying a mystery child. Her mother's voice on the phone grew more insistent. "Molly, why won't you come home? Why do you always say you're busy? People here are talking. What are you hiding?" Molly felt the walls of her secret life closing in. She knew she couldn't hide forever. One rainy night, as thunder shook the sky, Molly sat by the window of her room, staring out at the sheets of water pouring down. She heard a knock on her door. It was Tue again. His presence filled the room as he stepped inside, water dripping from his shoulders. He looked at her belly, now beginning to show, and for the first time his voice softened. "You can't carry this burden alone," he said. Her eyes brimmed with tears. But I don't even know if it's yours. He stepped closer, kneeling before her. It doesn't matter. You hear me? It doesn't matter. I will raise this child as mine if I must. And if the others can't accept that, then I will fight them all. Molly's breath caught in her throat. She saw the truth in his eyes, determination, loyalty, and something deeper she dared not name. Her hand trembled as she placed it over his. For a fleeting moment, she felt safe. But outside that fragile moment, danger still brewed. The other men were not as willing to surrender. Jealousy burned quietly in their hearts, and loyalty was beginning to splinter. This was no longer just about love or passion. It was about survival, identity, and the choices that would shape all of their lives. Molly was caught in the middle of a storm that was only growing stronger. And though she didn't know it yet, the real test was still to come. When her family would uncover the truth, when the Samoan men's unity would shatter completely, and when the world outside would demand answers she was not ready to give. The storm outside that night felt like an echo of the storm inside Molly's heart. The rain lashed against the glass. The sky cracked open with lightning. But it was nothing compared to the thunder of voices and emotions swirling within those walls. The next morning, the world looked deceptively calm. The sun returned, birds chirped, and neighbors went about their lives. But inside the house, every interaction carried an invisible weight. Molly could feel in the way the men moved, in the way their laughter had grown rarer, in the way they lingered in doorways when she passed. One morning, as she prepared breakfast, a plate slipped from her trembling hands and shattered on the floor. Instantly, 3 men rushed forward at once, Laki, Te, and Fedu. Their hands reached for her shoulders, their voices overlapping in concern. "Are you all right? Don't touch her. I've got her." "Step back. She doesn't need all of you crowding her." The argument grew in seconds, their voices bouncing off the kitchen walls. Molly pressed her hands over her ears and whispered, "Please stop." But they didn't hear her. Finally, she snapped, "Enough." Her voice cracked like a whip through the room. The men froze, stunned. She had never raised her voice like that before. Her chest heaved as she looked at each of them. "Do you think this is helping me? Do you think your fighting makes me feel safe?" Her hands instinctively moved to her belly. "I don't need battles. I need peace." The silence afterward was heavy. But for once, they listened. One by one, they stepped back, shame on their faces. But Molly could see it. The fire hadn't died. It had only been forced deeper inside. It was around this time that her mother's suspicions sharpened. Molly's phone calls home became shorter, her excuses more fragile. One evening, her mother's voice over the line carried a sharp edge. "Molly, I know you're hiding something. Don't think I'm blind. Your voice is different. Your life, it doesn't sound like the life you said you were living." Molly swallowed hard, gripping the phone as her eyes darted around the room, though she was alone. "I'm fine, May. Really, I'm just busy." "Busy with what?" her mother demanded. "Busy with who?" Her throat closed. Words failed her. Before she could reply, she heard the creak of the hallway floorboards. One of the men was outside her room, listening. The pressure mounted from every direction. She ended the call quickly, her hands trembling. She knew it was only a matter of time before her family demanded to see her. And when they did, the truth would not be so easily hidden. The men, too, sensed the danger. One night, during their private meeting in the courtyard, lit only by a single lantern, they spoke in hushed but urgent tones. "If her family finds out," one said, "they'll take her away." "And then what?" "They'll never accept this," another muttered. "They'll see us as monsters." "Then we make sure they never know," Feta said coldly. His words hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. Some of the brothers nodded in grim agreement, but others shifted uncomfortably. Laki's voice rose, sharp with anger. "You think hiding the truth will protect her? No, it will destroy her. She deserves honesty, not more lies." The circle of men broke into arguments, sides forming, voices clashing. Above them, unseen, Molly watched from her window. Her hands pressed the glass, her breath fogging the pain. Her heart sank as she realized they weren't just fighting for her love anymore. They were fighting for control, over her child, over the story itself. Days stretched into weeks, and Molly's belly grew. Her clothes no longer concealed the truth. When she went outside, she wore loose shawls, but the neighbors still whispered. Once, while buying vegetables, she overheard two women muttering in Thai. She's with them. The Samoans. Everyone knows. And now she's carrying a child. Shameful. The words cut deep. Molly hurried home, her eyes burning, the weight of shame pressing down on her shoulders. That night, she sat in her room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her once slim figure was now undeniably pregnant. She touched her belly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "What will become of us?" she whispered to the silence. But the silence did not last. The door opened quietly, and Tue stepped in. He saw her tears and knelt beside her. "They don't know you, Molly," he said softly. "They don't know your strength. Let them talk. Let them whisper. You carry life, and that is something sacred." His words soothed her, but only briefly, because deep down, she knew the whispers were only the beginning. The storm was still gathering strength. And then, as if fate had decided to accelerate everything, her mother announced she would come visit. The phone call was brief, her mother's tone firm. "I miss you, Molly. I'm coming next week. Don't argue." Molly's blood ran cold. She knew there was no stopping her. Panic gripped her chest as she hung up the phone. Around her, the men stood silent, their faces pale in the dim light. For the first time, Molly saw fear in their eyes. What would her mother say when she walked through those doors and saw not just Molly's belly, but the 22 men who claimed her? And more terrifying still, what would they do to keep the truth from spilling into the outside world? The days leading up to her mother's arrival were filled with suffocating tension. Each hour seemed heavier than the last. Molly could barely eat. The smell of food made her stomach turn, not just from the pregnancy, but from the dread curling inside her chest. The Samoan men, usually so bold and carefree, now acted like shadows of themselves. They moved quietly through the house, whispering among each other, exchanging uneasy glances whenever Molly entered the room. Their bravado was gone, replaced by fear. Tue called for a meeting. They gathered in the living room, the air heavy, the ceiling fan spinning lazily above as though mocking their unease. "She's coming in 2 days," Tue said firmly. His voice carried authority, but even he couldn't mask the strain. "We must decide, what will we show her? What will we tell her?" The room buzzed with voices. "We tell her nothing. Pretend we're just friends, sharing a house. She will see her belly. She's not blind. Then we say it's only one of ours, one man, not all of us. No, that will only make her suspicious. How will she believe such a story?" The men bickered endlessly, the sound of their voices rising like a storm. Molly sat silently in the corner, her hands cradling her stomach. Finally, she broke the noise. "Stop arguing. She is my mother. I will face her." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to her. She looked small, fragile even, but her voice carried a determination that silenced even Tay. "You can't protect me from this," she said softly. "And you can't hide forever. Whatever she sees, whatever she thinks, I must be the one to tell her." The morning of her mother's arrival came like a thunderclap. Molly stood at the doorway, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders, trying to hide her growing belly. Behind her, the men lingered like shadows, their eyes fixed on the street outside. When the taxi pulled up, Molly's knees nearly gave way. Her mother stepped out, carrying a small bag, her face tired but sharp, her eyes filled with suspicion. She hadn't seen Molly in months, and the first thing she noticed was her daughter's trembling smile. "Molly," her mother said, her voice heavy with both love and anger, "why didn't you come home sooner?" Molly's throat tightened. She wanted to run into her mother's arms, but guilt rooted her in place. "May, I missed you." Her mother's gaze swept past her, narrowing as she noticed the men standing inside the doorway, their large frames and foreign faces impossible to ignore. "Who are they?" she demanded. Before Molly could answer, Tue stepped forward, bowing his head respectfully. "We are her friends. We look after her." Friends? Her mother repeated, her tone sharp. Her eyes returned to Molly, scanning her body. She noticed the way her daughter's shawl clung to her form, the slight roundness of her belly. Her eyes widened. Molly, no. Molly's tears welled instantly. May, please, come inside. I will explain. Her mother's feet carried her into the house before she agreed. The men parted silently, their faces unreadable. The air grew thicker with every step she took. They sat in the living room. Molly's mother on one side, her lips pressed tight, her knuckles white around her handbag. Molly on the other, her hands trembling as she clutched her shawl closed. The men lingered in the background, silent but looming, like sentinels. Her mother spoke first. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the silence. Molly, tell me the truth. Are you pregnant? The words hung in the air like a blade. Molly's chest heaved. Her eyes dropped to the floor. Slowly, she nodded. Her mother gasped, a sound of heartbreak and fury combined. Who? Who is the father? The silence stretched unbearably. Molly's lips parted, but no words came. She looked at the men. Some shifted uncomfortably, others stood rigid. And then her mother followed her gaze. She realized the truth wasn't about one man. It was about all of them. Her eyes widened in horror. Molly, no. Tell me it's not what I think. Tell me these men, these foreigners, aren't all involved with you. Molly broke into sobs. May, please, don't say it like that. Don't look at me like that. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. But I love them. They care for me. They protect me. Protect you? Her mother spat. They ruined you. You are carrying shame in your womb. The men stirred at her words, some clenching their fists, others lowering their heads. 2A stepped forward, his face calm but firm. With respect, ma'am, she is not ruined. She is cherished, more than you can understand. Her mother's eyes blazed with anger. You think you can speak for her? You think you can take my daughter and do this to her? This is not love, it is madness. The clash between them dragged on for hours. Molly begged her mother to understand, but every word was met with disbelief, with tears, with anger. The men tried to defend her, but their presence only deepened her mother's horror. By nightfall, her mother demanded, You will come home with me, Molly. Tomorrow, pack your things. Molly's heart stopped. Her eyes darted to the men. They looked back at her, their faces a mix of fear and desperation. If she left, it would break everything. If she stayed, she risked breaking her mother's heart forever. That night, Molly lay awake, tore between two worlds, her family, her blood, her past, and the men who would become her present, and the child that would shape her future. But while she lay sleepless, downstairs, the men were already scheming. They could not allow her to be taken away. Some whispered of begging her mother. Others spoke of proving their love. But a few spoke of darker methods. Her mother is the problem, one of them muttered. If she won't accept us, then perhaps she should not stay here at all. The room grew cold. The others stared at him, horrified, but the seed had been planted. Upstairs, Molly turned restlessly in bed, unaware of the dangerous thoughts taking root below. And so the storm grew closer, darker, ready to break. The second morning began with a heavy silence. The house, usually filled with the boisterous voices of Samoan men, was quiet as if holding its breath. The air carried tension so thick it seemed to press against every wall. Molly's mother, May, woke early. She stood at the window of the guest room, staring out at the garden where dew clung to the grass. Her thoughts churned relentlessly. Her daughter was pregnant. Her daughter was entangled with not one man, but a whole houseful. Every time May thought about it, her chest tightened with disbelief and rage. Downstairs, the men moved carefully. They had agreed to show respect while May was present, but unease stirred among them. Not all of them agreed on what to do. Some thought persuasion would win her over. Others believed only firm action could protect what they now claimed as theirs. Te, the eldest, gathered them quietly in the kitchen. Listen, he said, his deep voice steady but urgent. No foolish talk of harm. This is Molly's mother. Whatever we do, it must be to show her that we are worthy. If we frighten her, we lose Molly forever. The men nodded reluctantly, though some eyes burned with unspoken thoughts. May came down later, her sharp eyes catching the men standing stiffly as though awaiting judgment. She didn't greet them. Her gaze fell immediately to Molly, who was preparing tea at the counter. May noticed how her daughter's hands trembled as she poured. "Sit with me," May commanded. Molly obeyed, her heart racing. The men lingered in the room, their presence heavy. "Why, Molly?" May's voice cracked, but her eyes stayed sharp. "You had a future, education, opportunities. Why throw it away for this?" She gestured toward the men, her hand shaking with fury. Molly's lips trembled. "May, it wasn't like that. They were kind to me. They filled the emptiness when I felt alone." May slammed her palm on the table, making Molly flinch. "Kind? Molly, kindness does not leave you trapped with a child before you are ready. Kindness does not make you a spectacle, living with 22 men." A murmur rose from men. 2A stepped forward again. "Ma'am, we never force her. She chose to be here." May turned her glare on him. "And what kind of men allow this? What kind of men take advantage of a young girl? You are many. She is one. Do you call that love?" The silence was deafening. Some of the men dropped their heads. Others clenched their jaws. Molly burst into tears. "Please, May," she begged. "Don't speak as if I am only a victim. I chose this life. It is mine now." Her mother's face softened for only a moment, grief passing over her features. But then her anger returned, sharper than ever. "No, Molly," May said, her voice breaking. "You don't understand. You think this is love, but it's poison. You think you chose, but they clouded your mind." That day stretched endlessly. May walked through the house, observing every detail. She noticed how the men deferred to Molly, how they hovered protectively around her, how their eyes followed her every movement. It unsettled her deeply. It was devotion, yes, but it was also possession. In the afternoon, one of the younger men, Lockie, tried to bridge the gap. He approached May while she sat in the garden. "Ma'am," he said softly, "I know you don't trust us, but we love her. Truly, Molly is not just a girl to us. She is family now." May's eyes narrowed. "Family," she spat. "What you call family, I call disgrace. Do you not see what you've done to her?" Lockie's face reddened with shame. He muttered, "We only wanted to protect her." "Protect her?" May snapped. "From what? From me? From her own blood? You are men, grown men, and she is my child." The young man lowered his eyes and backed away, defeated, but May's words echoed in the house. They reached every ear, piercing even the most stubborn hearts. By evening, whispers spread among the men. Some argued that May would never accept them, and that Molly might be torn away unless they acted. Others feared that May's anger would reach beyond the house, that she would return to her community, to the authorities, and expose everything. "She cannot stay," one muttered darkly. "She must stay," another countered. "What if she goes to the police?" "She won't. Molly won't allow it." But doubt was everywhere. Molly, unaware of the darkest whispers, spent the evening clinging to her mother. She tried to coax warmth back into May's heart, cooking her favorite meal, telling her stories from her childhood. But May's face remained rigid. She smiled faintly at times, but it was a sad smile, heavy with disappointment. When night came, Molly's heart felt torn into two. She sat by her window, looking at the moon, one hand resting on her growing belly. Inside her, life stirred, a reminder that whatever choices had been made, the future was already set in motion. Behind her, she felt eyes watching. She turned and saw Tue standing in the doorway, silent. His gaze was calm, but his words carried weight. "Do not worry, Molly," he said softly. "We will not let her take you away." Molly froze. His words felt both like comfort and a threat. She didn't know which. The next day brought storms, both outside and within. Rain lashed against the windows. Thunder cracked overhead, and inside, May confronted the men directly. "I will take her home," May declared. "I don't care what you say. She is my daughter, and I will not leave her here." The room erupted in voices. You cannot take her. She belongs with us now. She carries our child. You are stealing her. May's face turned pale but resolute. She turned to Molly. Pack your bags. Now. Molly's hand shook. Her eyes darted between her mother and the men. Her stomach tightened as the storm inside her mirrored the one outside. Tue raised his hand, silencing the others. Molly will choose, he said firmly. Not you, not us, only her. May's lips pressed into a thin line. Then choose, Molly. Right now, do you come home with me, or do you stay in this prison you call home? The room fell silent. The rain beat harder against the windows. The men leaned forward, tense. May's eyes blazed with desperation. And Molly, her tears blurred her vision, her heart thundering louder than the storm. Her lips parted. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Molly stood frozen, her body trembling as if the storm outside had entered her veins. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. Pack your bags. Come home with me. But the men's eyes bore into her, silently pleading, silently demanding. Stay. Do not leave us. The silence was unbearable. Even the sound of thunder seemed to hush, waiting for her answer. She clutched her stomach instinctively, her hand pressing against the faint curve of new life growing within. May noticed and stepped closer. You see? Even now you protect what they did to you. Molly, you're still so young. Let me take you away before it's too late. Her words, though sharp, were heavy with tears. May reached out, but before her hand could touch Molly's shoulder, Tue moved between them, his tall frame blocking her path. His voice was low, but it carried the weight of stone. She stays here if she chooses to. Do not try to take her by force. We will not allow it. The men behind him nodded, their faces a mixture of fear and defiance. May's chest heaved, her fists clenching at her sides. You speak as if she is your possession, May spat. But she is my daughter, my blood. You will not keep her from me. Her voice cracked on the last words. The tension in the room was suffocating. That night, the air in the house was electric. Every hallway whispered with suspicion. Every shadow seemed alive with plotting. The men gathered in hushed groups, their voices sharp and hurried. What if she goes to the authorities? One asked. She'll destroy everything, another muttered. We can't let her leave, someone whispered, eyes flicking toward the room where May was sleeping. Tue raised his hand again. No harm will come to her, he warned, his voice steady. We win her trust, or we lose Molly forever. Violence is weakness. But not all of them agreed. Lockie, restless and young, hissed, If she takes Molly away, what's the point of waiting? What do we have left? His words were met with silence, but the seed was planted. Meanwhile, May lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. The storm had quieted, but her mind raged louder than thunder. She thought about Molly's childhood. The night she stayed up with her when she had fevers, the morning she braided her hair for school, the way her daughter once clung to her hand as if she were the only safe place in the world. And now that same daughter sat surrounded by men who claimed her, who spoke as if she belonged to them. May's chest ached with helpless fury. What if I've already lost her? She thought. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she clutched her phone, scrolling through contacts, hovering over the police number. But doubt gnawed at her. If she called them now, what would happen? Would Molly hate her forever? Would Molly side with the men? May turned on her side, whispering into the darkness. I will not give up. Not yet. The following morning, the tension in the house was visible in every glance, every movement. The men acted carefully, preparing breakfast, speaking in polite tones, but beneath the surface, nerves crackled like fire waiting for kindling. Molly sat at the table with her mother, trying to create a bridge between the two worlds colliding inside the house. She spoke softly about her pregnancy, about her hopes. May, it may not be the life you wanted from me, but I am not unhappy. I feel cared for here. May's eyes narrowed. Cared for? Molly, you are surrounded by men who see you as theirs. That is not care. That is control. One of the men, Manu, spoke up, his voice trembling with emotion. We do not control her. She is free to walk away if she wishes, but she stays because she wants to. May turned her fierce gaze on him. Do you hear yourself? She is one, you are many. What freedom does she truly have? The table fell silent. Molly's tears welled again, her heart breaking under the weight of two worlds tugging at her. That afternoon, whispers turned into plans. While May rested in the garden, a few of the younger men gathered in the storage room. Their voices were sharp, dangerous. She won't ever accept us, Lockie muttered. She'll poison Molly against us. She'll run to the police the moment she leaves. But Tue said no harm. When reminded, Lockie's jaw tightened. Tue is too soft. Sometimes, to protect what we love, we must do what others will not. The men exchanged uneasy looks. None dared speak louder, but the thought lingered in the air like smoke, unspoken, undeniable. Inside the house, Molly stood by the window, watching her mother in the garden. May sat rigidly on the bench, her hands folded in her lap, her face unreadable. For the first time, Molly wondered if her mother would truly leave her behind, or she would tear the whole house apart to take her away. Her stomach turned as the baby shifted inside her. She whispered softly, "What do I do? What do I choose?" Behind her, Tue appeared once again, his presence quiet but heavy. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to choose tonight. But remember, our bond is deeper than they can understand. You are part of us now." Molly closed her eyes, torn between love and fear, between loyalty and blood. And outside, in the gathering dusk, May whisper her own vow to the fading light. "I will save you, Molly, even if it breaks me." The next day began with an uneasy calm, the kind of silence that carries hidden storms beneath it. May woke earlier than the rest, her body restless, her thoughts racing. She slipped quietly out of the guest room and wandered to the corridors of the house. The place was bigger than she had realized, filled with framed photographs of the men together, old souvenirs from Samoa, and hand-carved wooden statues. But something unsettled her more than the decor. Everywhere she looked, there were traces of Molly, a scarf left draped on a chair, a pair of shoes by the doorway, a book half-read on the sofa. May stopped before a photograph on the wall. It showed Molly smiling, her arms wrapped around some of the men during what looked like a festival. Her smile was bright, but May's chest clenched. Was it genuine joy or a mask to hide her entrapment? Behind her, a voice broke the silence. She was happy that day. May turned sharply to find Manu standing in the hallway. His eyes were soft but tired. He nodded toward the photograph. That was her first spring festival with us. She laughed until her voice went hoarse. We didn't force that smile. It was real. May's jaw tightened. And yet, she is carrying a child before she has even lived her own life. What kind of happiness is that? Manu lowered his gaze. The kind she chose, even if he could not accept it. He walked away, leaving May trembling with anger. In the kitchen, the atmosphere was different. Tue and several men discussed chores, speaking in low voices. But tension simmered under the surface. Lockie leaned against the counter, his arms crossed, his face hardened. "You still think patience will solve this?" Lockie hissed. "She won't ever accept us. You saw her glare. She despises us." Tue kept his tone calm but firm. "And what would you do? Frighten her? Hurt her? That will only destroy everything Molly has built with us." Lockie smirked bitterly. "Sometimes fear works better than false kindness. If we let her go, she'll take Molly away and run to the police. Then what? We lose her, we lose the baby, and we lose our family." Several of the younger men shifted uncomfortably, clearly swayed by his words. Tue's eyes darkened. He stepped closer, his voice low but commanding. "Listen carefully. If any of you think of crossing me, if you bring harm to her mother, you will answer to me, and I promise you will regret it." His words silenced the room, but the division was already drawn. Two factions, one clinging to Tue's restraint, the other tempted by Lockie's dangerous path. Later that morning, May sat with Molly in the garden. The sunlight was warm, but the conversation was cold. "Molly, do you not see? They argue over you when you're not even in the room. They divide themselves because of you. That is not love, child, that is obsession. Molly's hands trembled on her lap. She whispered, May, I know it looks wrong, but you don't understand. Each of them carries me in different ways. I was lost before. Now I feel seen. May's throat tightened with grief. Seen? Or trapped in their gaze so you cannot look away. Her daughter's eyes filled with tears, but she turned her face away, unable to answer. From the balcony above, unseen by them, Lockie leaned against a railing, watching the exchange with narrowed eyes, his fists clenched at May's words. Every sentence she spoke felt like a dagger stabbing at their fragile family. By afternoon, the house felt divided. Some of the men kept close to Tae, their loyalty firm. Others began whispering around Lockie, their frustration growing. The tension spread like cracks in glass, visible, inevitable. May sensed it, too. She saw how the men's eyes darted at one another, how their footsteps echoed like warning drums down the hallways. For the first time, she realized this was not simply about Molly. It was about power. That night, May decided she could not sit idly any longer. She waited until the house fell quiet. The moonlight spilled across the floor as she stepped softly through the halls. She found her way into a small study tucked at the back of the house. Inside, she discovered shelves of ledgers, notebooks, and photographs. She flipped through them with shaking hands. There were pictures of Molly from the past year. Too many, too detailed, showing her in private moments. Cooking, reading, even sleeping. May's stomach turned. Her fingers moved to the notebooks. Inside, she found entries written by different men, recording daily thoughts and memories with Molly. Some pages were filled with tenderness, recounting how they comforted her when she cried. But others were darker, lines about jealousy, arguments over who deserved more of her attention, threats to one another masked as confessions. May closed the book sharply, her breath unsteady. This was no ordinary household. It was a world built entirely around her daughter, and it was crumbling at the edges. Behind her, the floor creaked. May spun around, clutching the book to her chest. In the doorway stood Lockie, his expression unreadable. What are you doing in here? He asked, his voice low but edged with danger. May's heart raced. Looking for the truth, she said firmly. Lockie stepped closer, his eyes glinting in the dim light. Be careful, ma'am. Sometimes the truth is heavier than you can carry. Upstairs, Molly stirred in her sleep. She dreamed of waves crashing on a shore, of hands reaching for her, pulling her in different directions. Her mother's voice called to her from one side, the men's voices from the other. She tried to run, but her feet sank into the sand, heavy, immovable. When she jolted awake, her body was damp with sweat. She pressed her hand against her belly, whispering softly to the life inside her. Which world will you be born into? Her whisper carried into the darkness, unanswered. May barely slept that night. Lockie's warning in the study replayed in her head like a curse. Sometimes the truth is heavier than you can carry. She lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint creaks of the house as the men moved about, their footsteps above her head, their whispers in the hall. It felt less like a home and more like a fortress, one she had accidentally stepped into but had no control over. By dawn, she made a decision. If she couldn't reason with Molly here, maybe she could seek help quietly outside. She didn't trust the police entirely. Too many stories of corruption, too many risks of word leaking back to men, but she thought of calling an old friend, someone she hadn't spoken to in years but who still lived nearby, someone who might be able to guide her. But first, she needed to keep Molly safe. Meanwhile, in another part of the house, 2A sat at the long dining table with several of the older men. Their faces were drawn with worry, their hands gripping mugs of coffee that had long gone cold. This cannot continue, one of them muttered. May will never accept us. And now Lockie whispers poison into the younger one's ears. 2A's face was grim. I know, but violence will only ruin us. We must hold steady, even if she curses us to our faces. Molly must not see division among us. But even as he spoke, he sensed the walls closing in. He knew some of the younger men already leaned toward Lockie's vision, a harder, more forceful way of protecting what they believed was theirs. And he knew if that rift widened, it could shatter everything. Later that morning, Molly came down to breakfast with heavy eyes. She hadn't told her mother, but she hadn't slept either. The dream lingered, haunting her, the waves, the voices, the pulling hands. She sat quietly beside May, her appetite gone. The men tried to lighten the atmosphere, offering food, pouring tea, but May's silence was sharp enough to cut through any attempt at peace. Finally, May spoke. "Molly, we need to leave this place today." The words hung in the air like thunder. Forks clattered against plates. Several of the men stiffened, their eyes flashing. Molly shook her head weakly. "May, please don't." May leaned closer, her voice firm, unshaking. "This is not a home. It's a prison disguised as one. I won't watch you waste your life here." Lockie, sitting at the far end of the table, smirked bitterly. "She won't leave. Not with you. She belongs here now." The room went silent. All eyes turned to him. Two-Way's voice cut across the table, deep and commanding. "Enough, Lockie." But May seized a moment, pointing a trembling finger at the young man. "Do you hear yourselves? Do you hear how you speak of her? As if she's an object to own? This is exactly why I must take her away." Molly covered her face with her hands, tears spilling between her fingers. Her heart felt like it was being torn in two. After breakfast, May tried to pull her daughter aside. They sat in a quiet corner of the garden, where vines crawled along the walls and birds sang faintly above. May's voice softened, breaking through her anger with raw pleading. "Molly, listen to me. I am not your enemy. I am your mother. I know you think you love them, that they love you, but love does not divide a woman into pieces. Love does not demand that you give yourself to everyone until there's nothing left of you. Please, child, come back with me, before it's too late." Molly's lips quivered. She whispered, "But May, what about the baby?" May's chest tightened, and for the first time her voice broke completely. "Then we raise it together. We give it a real future. Not here, not in this madness." For a moment, Molly seemed swayed. Her eyes filled with longing, the desire to cling to her mother's embrace. But then Tay appeared at the garden gate. His presence was calm, steady, but powerful. "Molly," he said softly, "don't let anyone make you believe you are less strong than you are. You build a life here. We stand with you." May stood, her fists clenched. "And what happens when she wants to stand without you? Will you let her? Or will you chain her here under the name of love?" The two adults locked eyes, silent thunder passing between them. Molly, caught between them, felt her breath shorten until she thought she might collapse. Inside the house, the whispers grew louder. The younger men gathered around Lockie in the storage room again, voices sharp with urgency. "She's poisoning Molly's mind. If she leaves, everything falls apart." Tay doesn't see it. He's blinded by his own calm. Lockie leaned forward, his eyes fierce. "Then we act, not against Molly, never, but against her mother. She cannot leave this house and take Molly with her. If she tries, we stop her, whatever it takes." The men around him nodded slowly, uneasily. The pact was not spoken aloud, but it was sealed in their silence. That night, May moved carefully. She waited until she was sure the men were asleep before slipping her phone from under her pillow. With trembling hands, she typed a message to her old friend, begging for help. But before she could press send, she heard footsteps outside her door. Slow, deliberate. She froze. The doorknob rattled gently, then stopped. Whoever was lingered outside, their shadow faintly visible on the crack of the door. May held her breath, clutching the phone to her chest. After what felt like an eternity, the shadow moved away. When she finally exhaled, her body shook violently. She hadn't sent the message. The draft remained unsent, glowing faintly on her screen. Molly, in her own room, pressed a hand against her belly and whispered again to the life inside her. "Tell me, little one, what do I do?" Her voice cracked. The house around her seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for her answer. Under the pale light of the half-moon, the island seemed almost dreamlike. Waves crashed softly against the rocks beyond the garden wall, and the wind carried the scent of salt and rain into the house. But inside those walls, no one was sleeping. May lay awake again, her heart racing in the dark. She had replayed a conversation with Molly over and over, searching for the moment she lost her grip, the instant her daughter slipped from her influence. It wasn't just stubbornness or youthful rebellion. No, something deeper had been done to her, something deliberate. She turned over in bed, staring at the faint outline of the ceiling fan spinning slowly above. She had lived long enough to recognize manipulation, to know when someone's mind had been carefully shaped and molded. Molly's words weren't the words of a free young woman. They were the words of someone who had been conditioned to believe that pain was love and control was care. They rewired her, May thought bitterly. And I let them. The thought made her stomach twist with guilt. Meanwhile, in another part of the house, Molly too was awake, sitting by the window in silence, watching the sea. Her fingers traced the curve of her stomach, a gesture she had done countless times now. But tonight it felt different. The life inside her had become more real, more present. A tiny kick beneath her palm reminded her of what was at stake. She whispered into the night, her voice fragile. "Will you hate me for the choices I made?" The baby couldn't answer, but in that silence, Molly imagined 1,000 futures. Some where a child grew up happy and loved, others where the shadows of her choices haunted them both. Then, suddenly, movement outside caught her attention. Figures, 2, maybe 3, slipped through the garden and toward the back gate. Their movements were quick and calculated. Molly's heart thudded. She recognized one of them instantly, Lockie, and he wasn't alone. The next morning, May decided to act. She needed to speak with someone beyond these walls, someone who could help her understand the legal and physical dangers of the situation. But every attempt she made to leave the house was quietly blocked. At the gate, a man she didn't recognize politely told her that the locks had been changed for security reasons. In the kitchen, her phone was suddenly missing, despite her swearing she had left it charging on the table. Even when she tried to speak privately with the delivery driver at the front door, one of the younger men appeared at her shoulder within seconds, smiling too kindly, standing too close. It wasn't paranoia anymore. May was a prisoner, and worst of all, Molly didn't see it. Days turned into weeks, and the tension thickened. Lockie's faction grew bolder, and whispers spread to the house about plans and measures. May began to notice that Molly was never left alone anymore. There was always someone nearby, offering food, starting conversations, accidentally walking into the room when she was on the phone. It was subtle but unmistakable. They were watching her, all the time. Tue noticed it too. Though he remained the calm center of the storm, his patience was being tested. He called Lockie into his office one night, slamming the door shut behind him. "What are you doing?" Tue's voice was cold, controlled, but dangerous. "What needs to be done," Lockie replied. "She's trying to take Molly away. She's trying to destroy everything we built." Tue stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "We built nothing worth keeping if it must be defended with fear. If she leaves because she wants to, we have already failed." Lockie's jaw tightened. "She won't leave. She can't. Not anymore." It was the first time Tue realized just how far Lockie had gone, and how little control he had over the younger men now. That night, May finally reached her breaking point. She snuck into the small study near the back of the house, and found an old landline phone still connected to the wall. With trembling hands, she dialed the only number she still remembered from memory, an old friend from Bangkok, who now worked with a nonprofit that helped traffic women and children. "Hello." The voice on the other end was groggy but kind. "Please," May whispered. "It's me. I need help. My daughter, she's in danger. They've taken her. They say she's free, but she's not. None of us are." "May, slow down," the woman said. "Where are you? Are you safe?" Before she could answer, footsteps echoed down the hallway. May's blood ran cold. She slammed the receiver down and slipped out the side door just as the handle turned. Tue stepped into the study seconds later, frowning. The phone's cord swung slightly, betraying that someone had been there. The next morning, Molly noticed her mother was quieter than usual. She sat by the window again, staring out at the waves with empty eyes. "May," Molly said softly, sitting beside her. "Please don't hate me. May turned to her, exhausted but resolute. I don't hate you. I could never hate you. But I hate what they've done to you. I hate that they've made you believe this is love. Molly's lips parted to respond, but she said nothing. May reached out and held her daughter's hands. Do you remember when you were little and you said you wanted to be a doctor? Or when you told me you'd travel the world and see the northern lights? That was you, Molly. That was the girl I raised. She's still in there. Please don't bury her under their lies. Tears filled Molly's eyes. I'm not the same person anymore. You're still my daughter, May said, and I will fight for you until my last breath. But as she spoke those words, something was already in motion. Down by the dock, Lockie and two of his loyal men loaded bags into a small boat. They spoke in hushed tones, glancing back toward the house every few seconds. She's calling for help, one of them said. We can't let outsiders come here. Lockie nodded. Tonight, before dawn, we end this. Meanwhile, far from the island, May's friend from Bangkok had already contacted local authorities after their brief phone call. She didn't know where exactly May was, but she knew someone was in trouble, and that was enough. A file was opened. A message was sent to Samoan authorities, and for the first time a light, faint but growing, pierced through the darkness surrounding May and Molly's world. In the main house, as the night deepened once again, Molly dreamed of the future, of raising her child, of living free from the suffocating expectations of the men around her. But the question that haunted her, even in sleep, was whether she had the strength to break away. And in the shadows, May sat awake, a bag packed beneath her bed, a plan forming in her mind. If help wasn't coming soon, she would make her own escape, even if it meant running into the jungle barefoot with her daughter in the middle of the night. She didn't know how. She didn't know when. But she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't leaving this island without Molly. The night thickened around the house like a suffocating blanket. Clouds rolled over the moon, cutting off its silver light, and leaving the island cloaked in uneasy darkness. The sound of waves crashing against the shore was constant, like a heartbeat beneath the silence of compound. But inside those walls, things were not still. May couldn't sleep. She sat in her room with the bag still packed beneath her bed, her body tense as if it already expected footsteps to thunder down the hallway at any moment. She replayed the sound of her friend's voice over the phone again and again, clinging to it like a lifeline. Help might be coming, but would it come soon enough? Molly, on the other hand, drifted in and out of uneasy dreams. In one dream, she held her baby in her arms and saw sunlight flooding over an open field. In another, the baby cried endlessly. Its tiny fists clenched as faceless men surrounded her, pulling it away. She woke in a cold sweat, her hand instantly covering her stomach, whispering, I won't let them take you. I promise. Meanwhile, Lockie sat outside near the dock, sharpening a knife. The metal scraped against the stone in slow, deliberate strokes, his eyes reflecting the weak glow of a lantern. His men whispered around him, asking questions he didn't answer. His mind was elsewhere. He saw May's face, defiant and challenging, and he hated it. He saw Molly's eyes, sometimes soft with trust, other times distant with doubt, and it rattled him. She's slipping away, he muttered under his breath, the knife's edge glinting in the light. And if she slips away, everything we built will collapse. One of the younger men leaned closer. What do we do? Lockie stopped sharpening, looked at the blade, and smiled faintly. We remind her. We remind her who owns her heart. The others nodded nervously. Back in the house, May quietly moved through the hallways. She had grown used to the rhythm of the guards, the way they drifted in and out of the rooms at certain times. Tonight, she timed her steps to avoid them, finally slipping into the kitchen. She opened a drawer and pulled out a small paring knife. It wasn't much, but it was something. Her hands trembled as she hid it under her shawl. If they come for us tonight, I won't let them drag her without a fight. Suddenly, a voice came from behind her. May! Her heart jumped. She spun around to see Tay standing in the doorway, his expression shadowed. You shouldn't be wandering at night, he said softly. May clutched the knife under her shawl. And you shouldn't keep people locked in cages and call home. 2A sighed, stepping into the room. You think I don't see what's happening? You think I don't know what Lockie is doing? But if I stop him now, the others will turn against me. They will destroy each other, and Molly will be in the middle of it. Then stop pretending this is family. May snapped, her voice breaking. Because it's not. It's a prison. And my daughter is your prisoner. The words hung heavy between them. 2A looked at her for a long time, then whispered, I can't protect her forever. May's eyes narrowed. Then I will. At the same moment, in her room, Molly stirred again. She thought she heard voices outside her window. She sat up slowly, pushing the curtain aside just enough to glimpse the dock. Her heart dropped. Lockie and his men were loading ropes, tarps, and fuel cans onto the small boat. Their movements were urgent, purposeful. One of them glanced up toward the house, and Molly ducked quickly, pressing her back against the wall. A thought entered her mind that made her blood run cold. They're not waiting for me to choose. They're going to take me. Her breath quickened. For the first time, the fantasy of safety she had built around Lockie began to crack. This wasn't love. This was something else. Something darker. Later, when the household was quiet again, May went back to her room and found Molly sitting at the edge of her bed, her face pale. They're planning something, Molly whispered. I saw them. May's chest tightened. She knelt in front of her daughter, holding her shoulders. Listen to me. We don't wait anymore. We can't. We leave tonight. Molly's eyes widened. Leave? How? They'll stop us. Not if we move before they do, May said, her voice fierce but low. I have a plan. She pulled out the small knife she had taken from the kitchen. It wasn't much, but it was enough to convince Molly that May was serious. We'll head for the jungle, May continued. We'll follow the shoreline until we reach the old fishing huts I saw when we first came here. If we can get that far, we can signal for help. Molly hesitated, her hand resting on her stomach. But what if they find us? May cupped her daughter's face, tears burning her eyes. Then at least we'll go down fighting together, not living as their property. But outside the door, a shadow lingered. One of Lockie's men had heard everything. He crept silently down the hall, back toward the dock, where Lockie waited with the others. Leaning in, he whispered, They're planning to run. Lockie's smile was cruel and satisfied. Good. Let them try. The storm clouds gathered heavier overhead, thunder rolling far in the distance. Rain began to fall, first lightly, then harder, pelting against the roof of the house. The perfect cover for what was about to unfold. May clutched Molly's hand, guiding her through the back hallway toward the service door. The rain masked their footsteps, the wind covering the sound of the creaking hinges as they slipped out into the night. For the first time in weeks, May breathed in the open air of freedom. The jungle stretched before them, dark and wet, but it was their only hope. She whispered, Run. And they did. Into the storm, into the shadows, with nothing but each other and the fragile hope that somewhere beyond this nightmare, freedom still waited. The rain hammered down relentlessly, drenching the earth and masking every sound, as if nature itself wanted to protect May and Molly. Their footsteps sank into the wet soil, splashing mud across their legs, but they didn't stop. Every second felt stolen, every breath borrowed. May's grip on her daughter's wrist was iron, tugging her forward even when Molly faltered under the weight of exhaustion and fear. The jungle was alive with the storm. Branches cracked under the pressure of wind, leaves shook violently, and the distant roar of the ocean grew louder. Lightning split the sky in jagged veins, illuminating the thick canopy for a heartbeat before plunging everything back into suffocating darkness. May whisper hoarsely, Keep moving, don't stop, no matter what. Molly's breath came out in ragged gasps, her free hand clutching her swollen belly. Mama, I can't run much longer. May turned sharply, placing her hands on her daughter's shoulders. Her own face was streaked with rain. Hair plastered to her forehead, but her eyes burned with determination. You have to, Molly. For the baby. For both of us. If we stop, they'll find us. Molly nodded weakly, forcing her trembling legs forward again. Back at the compound, The storm hadn't stopped the men from noticing. The door creaked in the wind, swinging half open. Lockie stood inside the kitchen, drops of rain dripping from his cloak. His hand traced over the wet footprints leading away from the house. Muddy imprints pressed deep into the earth. His expression twisted, a mixture of fury and amusement. So, they think they can run. 2A, standing behind him, muttered, "Let them go. They'll die out there. The jungle isn't kind at night." But Lockie turned on him sharply, his voice a growl. "They're mine. You think I'll let her carry my child into the wilderness like some stray? No, she comes back, alive." 2A clenched his jaw, but said nothing. Lockie snapped his fingers at two of his men. "Bring the dogs." May and Molly stumbled through tangled vines and roots, the storm giving them cover, but also slowing them down. Their clothes clung to their bodies, heavy and soaked, and the mud pulled at their feet like hands trying to drag them back. Suddenly, a sound pierced through the thunder. A howl, low, deep and unmistakable. Molly froze, eyes wide. "Mama, the dogs." May's heart sank. She knew what that meant. Once the dogs caught their scent, their chances of staying hidden dropped to nothing. She grabbed Molly's hand again. "Faster. We need to reach the river." The river wasn't far, May remembered. She had seen it once when she was taken into the jungle during her early days there. If they could wade through it, maybe the current would wash away their trail. Behind them, Lockie's men unleashed two massive dogs, their noses low to the ground. They barked wildly, straining against the ropes until they were released, and then they lunged forward, cutting through the mud like arrows. The men followed with torches that sputtered in the rain, their voices echoing through the night. "She won't get far," one shouted. Lockie smirked grimly. He knew fear would drive them faster, but desperation always led to mistakes. The forest became denser, the ground uneven, and Molly stumbled over a root. She fell to her knees, crying out in pain. May rushed back, helping her up, but the fear in her chest nearly crushed her when she looked behind them and saw faint flickers of torchlight moving closer through the rain. "They're coming," May whispered. Molly's tears mixed with the rain. "Mama, I can't do this." May held her tightly, pressing her forehead to her daughter's. "Yes, you can, because you're stronger than you know. You have to be, for your baby." Molly sniffled, nodding shakily, and May helped her back up. At last, the sound of rushing water grew louder. The river. The trees opened slightly, revealing a wide stretch of water swollen from the storm, the current fast and dangerous. May didn't hesitate. She pulled Molly into water, the icy cold shocking them both. The current tugged at their legs, threatening to sweep them away, but May kept a tight grip. "Stay close. Just a little further." They waded deeper, the water rising their waists, then their chests. The mud at the riverbank dissolved under their feet, forcing them to cling to each other as the current pulled them downstream. But at least the dogs would lose their scent here. On the opposite side of the river, hidden beneath the trees, another figure was watching. It was Tay. He had left the compound under the guise of scouting ahead, but in truth, he had come to see what May and Molly would do. Now, as he watched them fight the current, he felt the weight of a decision crushing him. If he returned to Lockie, he could lead the men to them. If he stayed, he could help them, but it would mean betraying the only life he had ever known. He clenched his fists. Thunder cracked overhead, and for a moment, he saw Molly's face lit up by the lightning, pale, terrified, but full of determination, and something shifted inside him. Meanwhile, Lockie and the others reached the riverbank on the far side, the dogs barking wildly at the water's edge. "They crossed," one of the men shouted. Lockie's torch illuminated the swirling current. His eyes narrowed. "Then we follow." But the river was dangerous tonight, swollen and unpredictable. One wrong step, and it could drag a man under. The others hesitated, exchanging nervous glances. Lockie growled, furious at their hesitation. "I don't care if you drown. Get in the water." And so the chase pressed onward. May and Molly swept along by the raging river, the men and dogs struggling to track them in the storm. But the jungle was vast, and the storm merciless. For the first time, the hunters didn't seem so certain of victory. The river carried May and Molly further downstream, battering their bodies against rocks and branches, but also gave them something they desperately needed: time. The dogs lost the scent. The men's torches faded into the storm, and for a brief moment, it was only the two of them clinging to each other in the raging water. Finally, they washed up on a muddy bank, gasping for breath. May crawled onto the shore first, then helped her daughter out, both of them trembling and soaked to the bone. Molly lay back, clutching her stomach, the sound of her heartbeat loud in her ears. "Mama, are we safe now?" she whispered. May looked around the dark jungle, rain still pounding against the leaves. Her chest rose and fell, each breath ragged, but her voice was steady. "For tonight, yes, but we can't stay here. We need shelter." They stumbled through the forest until they found a hollow beneath an ancient tree, its thick roots arching upward to form a natural shelter. There, they huddled together, shivering, listening to the storm rage on. For the first time in weeks, there was no sound of footsteps following them, but far behind, the chaos was unfolding. Loki's men had scattered along the river, some nearly drowning as they tried to wade through the swollen current. The dogs barked wildly, but even they were confused, unable to follow the scent any further. Loki stood at the edge of the water, rain dripping from his face, his torch extinguished by the storm. His jaw tightened, his eyes cold and calculating. "They think they can escape me," he muttered under his breath, but he said no more. He turned back toward the compound, silent fury radiating off of him. The days that followed were grueling. May and Molly moved deeper into the jungle, surviving on wild fruits, roots, and water they collected from leaves. Molly's body weakened, her pregnancy making each step harder, but her determination grew stronger. Every night, when fear threatened to break her, May whispered, "We are not theirs anymore. We are free." Molly held on to those words like a lifeline. Weeks passed, and with the help of villagers living at the jungle's edge, May and Molly finally found refuge. A small fishing community welcomed them quietly, without questions. Here, the sea was their shield, and the stormy nights no longer meant danger, but a reminder of the night they had chosen freedom. Molly eventually gave birth to a daughter, her cries piercing to the salty air of the coast. May held her granddaughter in her arms, tears streaming down her face. "This child," she whispered, "will never know the chains we carried." The baby's small hand clutched her finger, a symbol of hope, of survival, and the strength passed down from mother to daughter. Back in the compound, Loki's power began to crumble. Without Molly, the men's loyalty wavered. Whispers spread, whispers of curses, of betrayal, of a leader losing his grip. Tué, the one man who had witnessed it all, eventually slipped away too. Some said he vanished into the jungle. Others he found the village where May and Molly lived, but no one truly knew. What was clear, however, was this: the empire of fear Loki had built could not withstand the strength of two women who refused to bow to it. And so the story of May and Molly is not just a story of survival, but a story of defiance, of love that could not be broken by cruelty. It is a reminder that even in the darkest of nights, courage can light the way forward. If you have been moved by their journey, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe courage is born in the moment of fear, or carried in the heart long before? Share your voice, because every voice matters. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Zimo Voice for more stories that reveal the strength hidden in ordinary lives.